All right, good evening to the folks that have to be here and the three that chose to be. Wednesday, February 3rd at 5:58 p.m. in the Sunapee Middle High School gym. We're going to kick off the Sunapee School District February meeting, starting with a roll call. Start on this side. Ellie, please.
Russ Wolfen, Superintendent.
Jesse Tyler, School Board.
Scott Ritzman, School Board.
Andy Nichols, School Board.
Carrie McCullough, School Board.
Ed Anderson, School Board.
Megan Reed, Assistant Principal, Sunapee Middle High School.
Sean Moynihan, Principal, Sunapee Middle High School.
Walter Houston, Principal of Sunapee Central Elementary School.
Thank you all. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Looking for a motion to approve the school board meeting minutes from January 13th, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the school board minutes from January 13th, 2021.
Is that a second for discussion?
I'll second.
Scott and Andy, thank you. Any comments, corrections? It's tough for our note drafter to always hear us through masks and large gym, so if there's something that comes up, let me know. Hearing none, all in favor of approving the January 13th school board meeting minutes as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes of January 13th bond and budget hearing. Notes for minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 13th, 2021 bond and budget hearings.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second for discussion?
I'll second.
Second from Carrie. Thank you. Any additions, corrections, commentary? Bond hearing's pretty exciting. All in favor of approving the January 13th, 2021 bond and budget hearing meeting notes as written, please say aye.
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 Beautiful. Agenda review. Anything you want to add, Superintendent?
We don't necessarily need to add it under number 5, suicide prevention response plan. We are going to need board approval on that. My thought was you could just do it after you heard the plan, but you're welcome to move that adoption of the plan or approval of the plan to action if you'd like.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to do that in the presentation. I would, if you left it to me for the suggestion, do the same thing. We just make a note for board action. It makes sense to do it that way. I wanted to add Carrie's agenda item to under informational about a potential for another committee, and we'll have her speak to that under informational after the deliberative session review. Anything else from the board or leaders or good? Okay, public forum in accordance with policy BEH. If any of the four would like to speak, Mr. Augustine.
John Augustine, Stagecoach Road. Two things. First, on the January Zoom Q&A session, just like I said, I think that was a very good idea. It was well executed. And also want to say, I asked the question during that session about what additional big dollar requests could be coming after the $10.6 million bond request for this year. So I forget how I worded it. It was, will there be big dollar requests for the middle high school or for athletic fields going forward? And the answer that I heard was no, there was nothing in the plan for that to happen. And I would just like that to get into the meeting minutes for tonight's meeting, school board meeting, because I don't think minutes were taken or will be recorded for that Zoom Q&A session. So if I heard that correctly, then I'll just restate it so that it gets captured for tonight's meeting minutes. Separate topic. On Monday, there was obviously the school deliberative session, and at that session, there was discussion about the teacher contract negotiations, and it was said by folks in the room. The process is very transparent and the voters are very informed on the details of the contract. So after the deliberative session, I went to the school website in hopes of reviewing the current teacher contract. However, I could not find the teacher contract on the school website. And I was later told it's not on the school website. It wasn't just my inability to manage technology. So I find that odd, particularly how emphatic the comments were on Monday about the citizens being well informed about the details of the contract. So maybe it's just an oversight that the contract's not on the website, but I would ask you to consider whether it should be on the website, and if so, to put it up there so that those who want to could read all the details of the contract. Thank you.
Thanks for being here and speaking up. Other voices in first to public comment? Seeing no motion, we are going to move to our guest speaker tonight, Cindy Montagne. Cindy, I'm sorry we don't have a packed house for you.
Oh,
this,
that's wonderful.
it's recorded and people will watch and people will listen. It's a critical topic, so you have the floor.
I'm gonna just start with information that the board has in front of them. Last year, we approved a policy on, just about a year ago, January, second meeting was in February, suicide prevention and response, JLDBB. Part of that policy had us developing a plan by May 31st, 2020. To Cindy's credit, we had worked on that plan from February and had that ready to go. COVID took over and we just sort of pushed it aside. Cindy came back, I think probably November, December, then I actually pushed it out to January. So with that said, we're bringing the plan in front of you tonight for approval. We have been working with the plan as needed, and it was in place by May. We just hadn't had it approved by the board. So don't want you to think that we were being neglectful of not having a plan in place. It just wasn't necessarily approved by the board, given there were a lot of other things that were going on at that time and place. So Cindy, I'll let you go from there.
So I think when we developed the plan, we were working from an already pretty nice framework that was already taking place when a student was identified at risk for self-harm or suicide ideation. But what we did is we really drilled it down and added a lot of detail. Part of the new regulations require that each building have suicide prevention liaisons. So for both buildings, it's the school counselors as well as the school psychologist, Dr. Murray, and myself as the district-wide suicide prevention liaison. So what happens, in your packet, there's a pretty detailed flow chart of how we manage this. So we get information about a child who might be at risk for hurting themselves in all kinds of ways. We get parents to call, it might be a social media post, it might be a writing assignment at school where the student brings up something. So once our staff is made aware of a concern that they have, they notify one of the building liaisons, school counselors, myself, or Dr. Murray. And then we sit down with the student and we screen them. What we added to the screening process that we didn't have in place before this new requirement is an evidence-based screener called the Columbia Suicide Prevention Severity Rating Scale. That just is it's a standardized measure that has most of the evidence supported for a tool of that kind. It's quick, it keeps it simple, it asks the very direct questions to the students. There's a lot of evidence that shows asking the question prevents a child from moving to the next step and actually harming themselves. So we try to do screening with 2 staff members with that student, and we run through the tool. The tool also helps us to say what level of risk the student falls under and gives us some recommendations about what is the next intervention. Sometimes it's a screening and no elevated risk is found, and we might be teaching a student better words to use than, oh, I hate that test, and then they say something that indicates that they're wanting to harm themselves, and we can give them more tools of dealing with what their struggles are. Or sometimes it leads to making an intervention about a recommendation for counseling, maybe talking to a pediatrician. You'll see that once we speak with a student and we determine the risk, we reach out to parents that day. We have a phone call with parents, and there's a really detailed parent safety sign-out form that we had a form, we just added to it, and in that form, There's very specific recommendations that we're making for parents. If there's a higher level of intervention that we're recommending, we also give that parent a packet as to how to go about getting that help. And part of my role is also that school-to-home link, so if parents are overwhelmed and don't know how to get that help, we're here to help them get that connection in the community to keep their child supported. So, I mean, pretty much the details are in your packets. There's a really detailed protocol that we follow. Staff training's been added. All staff participated in a 2-hour training presentation by Lonnie, and so they're more aware of the signs and what to look for when a child might be at risk for harming themselves. And in our guidance classes and health ed classes, students are learning about how to advocate when you're not feeling well and how to speak up and who are the adults that they can talk to if they're concerned about themselves or a friend. So it just helps us to, identify things and catch it earlier. When we ask kids the questions, we can get them help quicker if they're struggling. So I think most of the information is in your packets. I'm not sure if there's question and answer for this part, if you guys have questions about what we're doing in terms of screening.
How long do you follow students for once they've been identified?
Can you say a little louder?
How long do they follow students for once they're identified at risk?
It's really case by case. We have a student support team and we speak about students each week and kind of stay in touch. Sometimes in my role, parents are in touch with me more often. We try to follow to the point where a family says, we're all set, we've got this. And sometimes if that student's still struggling at school, we're still following them at school. We're just maybe not working on that home connection. When a parent says, thank you for the offer and we don't need the connection, we've got it, then we'll just monitor and make sure that student's supported in school. Sometimes it's a really quick screener, and there's not a lot of follow-up other than letting the parent know that this kind of came up and this is how we helped your child.
Okay, thank you.
What, aside from kind of the general training that the entire staff gets, do the specific liaisons get additional training or guidance?
We don't have a specific additional training, but it's really part of all the folks are either master's or doctor level mental health people. So the school counselors are master's level counselors. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor, and our school psychologist has a doctorate in psychology. So we have additional training. I think part of our student support team is consultation. So weekly we're just talking together and deciding the best course of action. And also looping in a big part is that the student is connected with mental health services already. We're looping right into that therapist as well. We're making a parent recommendation. We have a release, we talk to the therapist. If we don't, we're telling the parents this is important. The parent sign-out form is a really nice tool that they can give to their child's therapist or the pediatrician because there's a lot of information there. And sometimes just having that tool makes it easier than picking up the phone and calling and explaining what your child has gone through and just bringing it to the doctor's office.
Can you share some insight from your role and how this relates to it with what you're seeing with our student population during the last year for COVID? I've been reading, the context of my question is I've been reading about nationwide increase in even emergency room mental health visits with elementary school age children. So if you could share appropriate insight, that'd be really helpful to me as a board member.
I'm grateful that I get to be that connection between school and home. I think it's a really an expedited way to get kids and families the help they need. Kids are stressed and families are stressed. And navigating the systems to get the appropriate help you need is not always very easy. So I think, if I'm hearing your question, right, I think part of my role is really helping them navigate those difficult phone calls, who to call, which agency might be better based on that child's needs. Not telling them which agency, but kind of saying, if you choose this agency, this is what you have. If you choose this agency, this is what you have in terms of supports. And staying connected, I'm connected with the children's mental health throughout the state of New Hampshire pretty regularly. I'm part of different meetings. So I have a kind of a current pulse on what's happening in terms of the most expeditious way to get help if it's needed. So I really feel like for our kids and families, it might help to get a kid in. I mean, children's mental health there are waiting lists a lot of places right now, but sometimes there's ways to get kids in quicker. Does that answer your question, Jesse?
It does. I was just trying to see as the biggest strength of the policy as it's written? Our role is buildings, safety, and policy. If you wanted to give some feedback as an expert in this hard craft, what do you think is the strength of the policy so that we should be keeping that in mind?
I think it's really detailed. I think it outlines what we do in these situations and how to handle it, so that if one counselor isn't here, the other counselor hasn't done it in a while, they can see, they can follow the protocol. I think the Columbia screener gives us some protections around why we recommend what we recommend. It's not arbitrary, like, oh, I think that this, it's really a tool that helps us to identify the level of risk and the next appropriate intervention, which for a district that keeps us protected, and it also helps us to determine the next best intervention for that particular student before us, which is a great method of prevention. And I do think the more we talk about it, the more we catch kids sooner. There's a lot of examples where kids aren't needing a high level of intervention, but they might have started taking medication, and we're talking to a student who they haven't felt well since they started that medication, but they haven't told anyone. That's a pretty easy example to say to the parents, go back to the doctor, because this is what he's reporting or she's reporting. So I think the strength is talking about it, knowing how to act consistently, making it okay for the students to come forward if they're willing to help themselves, and then getting the kids help quicker, so that they can be here and learning and participating and thriving.
Cindy shared some great information with me, and I think just our ability from the policy to go to the plan to create a net that's not only bigger, but has more depth to it. And so we really opened our eyes to a lot more things, I think, than we were before. And just the information she showed me before we came down, it's really nice to see that we're catching kids in that net that sometimes maybe before this was in place might have sifted through. Where now at least we're able to put an eye on, put a plan in place, and they may be through with that pretty quickly, but it definitely is allowing us to catch more and be aware of more.
Yeah, especially in these times. Glad to hear your vote of confidence in the policy, your ability as a subject matter expert to navigate it successfully. Great. Thanks to the policy committee for
I guess from a policy standpoint or any other area, is there anything the board can do to provide you with additional support?
Are there other things that the board can do to provide support?
And whether it's tweak the policy or anything else that can be more supportive of your efforts.
I feel like we're moving in the right direction all the time. I think that this really just delineates how to do the work, and it kind of backs our staff when we're doing the work, loops parents in deeper. So in this particular area, I feel like we are in a pretty good position of having the right kinds of supports in place.
Other comments or questions? Thank you for the work you do for our students, and really appreciate you being out here tonight and sharing some insight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to move to school updates, starting with Mr. Houston on SES.
So for the month of January, our focus was to complete our midwinter assessments. Normally, we do just the assessments. We do a benchmark reading assessment 3 times a year, and at the end of every year, for the spring, we do the newest. Because of what happened last spring, we decided to do a fall DWUP to kind of see where the gaps happened because of being up last spring. So everyone had for reading and for math, and you were in the fall. When it came to midwinter, we decided not to do the reading one because we have our benchmark reading assessment routine. We really have no tool for math. We had the children in the whole school go through math and UIS. We'll do that again in the spring. Again, this year, we don't like to test kids that much, but for this year, we felt it was really important to keep progress of making sure we were closing the gap of what happened last spring. And I'm glad to report that we are closing the gap. Most of our students made incredible progress from September to January, and we were very proud of that. So proud that on Friday we ended the day with a dance party, which is what we needed after a crazy day on Friday. So it was a lot of fun to celebrate and move and just have a 15-minute party for all their hard work, because they have worked incredibly hard to close that gap that was caused from last spring. We have a total of 8 new students who have arrived since the holidays, and we have 2 remote students that returned back to class, back to the building. So altogether, we've had 10 students more than we did when we left for the holidays. Final count, I don't know if I told you this last month or not, but the PTO, their final count was around $11,000 with their raffle that they raised. So we were, again, they were able to make up the funds that they would have lost when they normally do the Chowder Fest in the fall. So that was a huge blessing for them. Our Valentine's, we're preparing for Valentine's Day. It's a big day for us in elementary land. Food service department is making cookies for us. Valentine's, that we are still swapping Valentine's, but we just have to rethink of it in a different way. So they're coming next Monday. We will pass them out and put them in plastic bags, put the plastic bags away for 4 days, and then take them out on Friday, and the children will get to take them home next Friday. It is also the 100th day of school. We might be crawling to that benchmark, but we're going to get there. And then we're also doing, many of you are aware of the Senior Citizens Project that the school has been involved with for years. And again, something that we just had to rethink how we're going to do this. So the children have been working on their projects, collecting little candies and hearts and note cards. All of that has been sorted and has been put away, and we will deliver it either next Friday or the following Monday, the 15th. We may get it the day after Wednesday. But again, it'll be quarantined, so they know it's been safe and everything should be okay with it. We continue to use our outdoor campus. Today they did snowshoeing, which was a lot of fun. And surprise, surprise, we are tomorrow meeting to start planning our summer reading program. So it is kind of amazing that summer is right around the corner. The last thing I want to do, and I'm glad she's still here to be able to say this, is a major shout out to Cindy. Cindy is a huge, huge resource for us at the elementary school, and I think she is also at the high school. I don't know how we would do half our job if it was not for Cindy. Cindy does a lot, meeting with families, connecting with families, especially now during COVID. Many of our families have been hit hard in many, many different ways, and she is always there to help them, support them, and she helps me to do my job. So again, thank you so much for all your hard work. We appreciate it. And also to our custodians. The 4 guys who work at our elementary school, they have kept that building tidy and neat and have bent over backwards. So I really want to do a special shout out to our custodians because they have worked incredibly hard to maintain our buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
I guess fortunately we haven't had quite the fluctuation in the elementary school. We do have 2 new students at the semester, 2 returned from remote. We didn't have a lot of students go remote anyway, but 2 of the students who did that. And we did have 3 students leave between the semesters, so we have 1 more student right now, which is quite manageable, even though our numbers are tight because of the social distancing. From a co-curricular standpoint, excited that we've started rehearsals for the spring play. So that was one we were kind of worried about. Right now, the plan is they will perform it and it will go Zoom for the audience. You know, we don't know what it'll look like when it comes. So we keep hoping that we might be able to expand a little bit, but that is the initial plan, and that way, hopefully it's better than that, but hopefully it's no worse than that. So they've started to do that. We're also hoping to really get a gardening club going, working with the town, and there's a spot in town, so hopefully the kids will get involved with that, and those plans are coming together. Kids were doing midterm exams, so we had our exam schedule. It went pretty well. A little bit challenging when you have some kids quarantining and then having to take the exams as well. We made an executive decision that we didn't do any remote exams. The reason for that is if we were doing entirely remote, we would have done so. But for the students who needed to quarantine, they would take the exams when they come back. A couple extreme situations, I might even waive the exam, depending on the length of time. But we did make the decision not to go remotely for any of the exams to keep it a similar testing environment for everybody. We had excitement last Monday. The sprinkler went off at 7:45 in the morning. The fire alarm went, and anybody who was driving down North Road saw a lot of kids doing the fire drill, which we had done in pieces this year, and there was no pieces. So we went outside. It was finally the time where I've been telling kids for years, when they come in shorts and a t-shirt, and it's 5 degrees, that this could be the day that we're going to have a fire drill. It finally happened, and the next day they still came in shirts and t-shirts. So nothing changed the day after that, but based on that, when the sprinkler system went off, I wasn't sure how long it would be till we could return. We did evacuate to the Sherburne gym because of the elements. For a short period of time, the students were not socially distancing, and I made that decision that it was more important to get them out of the elements than to have them socially distance on the bus, so we did that. And like a lot of things this year, kids were great, teachers were great, parents were great. So those are kind of things that can seem to throw you off in the morning. And at the end, an hour later, I was so happy just because everybody had done so well with it. So I wouldn't want to start every Monday that way, but it actually went relatively well. And that's what has been going on in the middle high school.
Thank you very much. Do you want to add anything about the process, the pros and sprinkler, just around out that, or putting on the spot a little?
Sure. Just, again, Sean did a great job managing it in that. The issue being where the sprinkler was and how the building was designed, it was in a place where we didn't even know it was. Literally behind sheetrock, over the overhang of the entrance over here. We didn't know where the water was coming from, alarm going off. Put a hole in the sheetrock and you can find the sprinkler to get in there, cap it. It's been there since the building's been done in 94, 95. How it's never gone off before, no one will really know. In the process of now stripping the walls, pulling the insulation, having Surf Pro come, dry it out, we found that entranceway, there has been years and years of water seeping in, going towards the building's created a rot. And so there's now not only sheetrock, but plywood and support joists that need to be taken out and replaced. Those will not be insured. Those obviously weren't caused by this specific leak. But the leak did expose other potential problems that were in that wall that we would have never known about any other way. Sean's done a great job of getting that class to another place in the building, whether it's in the cap or open classroom. We have contractors ready to go. We got the clearance from Surf Pro. They've treated what's there for mold. We probably won't be able to do the structural end of it right now because we want to get that class back up and running. We'll probably leave some of that open and maybe tarp it, and over the summertime have them come back, finish the sheetrock, do the structural piece, insulate, and done. So it's going to take some time to get it fixed. No one likes to have things like this happen, but I think all in all, we've handled it well. And I guess if there's a caveat or a plus, we found some structural stuff that if we didn't find now, probably 3 or 4 years from now, it would have created a lot more problems for us. So sometimes the hazard could be a blessing.
Yeah, so what's sort of your update? Keep on going.
Sure. So really, sorry.
Probably a silly question, but if the building's designed the same from this end down to that end, are people in checking all those other areas?
It's interesting because I asked, that was my first question, so have we done the same thing? Somehow we put little heaters up at the other entrances, but it was never done here. And the heaters, Matt could explain whether it's just a duct or a piece that keeps it warm. But that's been done in the other entrances, but not here.
But is it the heater what prevented the leak by keeping stuff warm, or is the leak
It keeps the
something
space warm. So it's really what it is the wall of the classroom goes here, the eave goes this way, and then it goes here. And this is all boxed in and insulated, but through the, is that what's called, faucet, or the overhang, I call it, fresh air comes up underneath the vinyl, and the sprinkler head's sitting right there. And it just, again, it's been there since '96. We've had much colder winters. It's never happened, but this one it decided it was time. Obviously preparing for the deliberative session and getting through all that. Still working with the project and getting that information out. But really spending a lot of time with new legislation and reviewing new legislation and really digging into some of the bills that are on the table and how they potentially could impact Sunapee. And more important, Sunapee, I think, just overall education and public education in New Hampshire. And one of the bills, and I know I've informed the board, is this HB 20. And HB 20, if you remember back 2 years ago to 191, I believe it was the voucher bill. This voucher bill is similar, if not worse, or in my estimation, I think it's much worse. It really has, I think, 4 components to it that I think are really peril, not only for education, but for the taxpayers of New Hampshire. The lack of transparency and accountability. Absentee voter approval of local expenditures. So the local voters will not have control over these expenditures. Lack of evidence of academic outcomes, and for sure, lack of access for all. If this HB 20 was to pass, this will be the largest, most open piece of voucher legislation in the country. You can have money up to $3,800 up to about $8,000, depending on what you qualify for your child, for your reduced lunch, reading scores, and base adequacy. We all know that adequacy aid already, or state adequacy money is at about $3,800, which is not adequate enough to educate any child in the state of New Hampshire, or any child, I think, in any state. That money could go to gas money, could go to buying a computer, could go be buying a desk, could go be tuition to a private school, and there's no oversight of those funds. And again, we're talking about bigger and more expanded than Arizona, Louisiana, places that have had these voucher programs in place that have failed miserably. There's some of the lowest performing states in our country have these voucher programs. The lack of transparency and the lack of accountability on with the finance end of it, I think as a local taxpayer, I would be outraged. There's a 10% administrative fee that this grant process can take just to process these grants to give them to a parent. All that aside, it's still pulling money away from public education and it's putting it elsewhere. When right now public education in the state of New Hampshire is grossly underfunded. And so continuing to keep an eye on it, there were almost 4,000 folks that registered in opposition of this bill. There were a couple hundred that showed up in support of it. They brought folks in, lobbyists in from Arizona to speak in New Hampshire on how positive this bill was. It wasn't people from the state of New Hampshire, it was people from out of state talking about this bill. This again comes down from a national agenda. And one of the things, I had an opportunity to sit on a Zoom call with Jesse, I think it was NEA, and there was a couple of professors from UWOL, and it was an interesting conversation because it had a focus on public education and sort of the deterioration and how legislation is trying to deteriorate public education from a national to a local. And one of the things they talked about, though, was a sense of community. And one of the things that America's always been proud of is this sense of community. The community that supports one another and supports the next generation. And what we're seeing here through legislation similar to this, it's not about community anymore, it's about the individual. And that individual here targeted in education, but it goes bigger than education, it goes to the community at large. It's deteriorating that you don't have to worry about you yet, I don't have to worry about you, I just need to take care of me. And as long as I take care of me, I'll have the advantage over you, and so I'll be better. Where we used to be, no, we're gonna make sure we're all getting the same so that we all can reach that potential and go where we need to go. Again, that essence of community. Both my parents grew up right outside of Boston, and in those days they had the Irish community, the Italian community, right? And those were very strong communities, and we grew up there, the grandparents and the relatives, and everyone just knew each other, and I think people understood what that sense of community meant. And I know we're a little more transient nowadays, but we're starting to lose that sense of community. And Sunup is a pretty small place that still holds on to that. But I go to some comments that we heard even Monday night about why are we paying for it? Why not we finding other ways to? And again, I think those are conversations that deteriorate from a sense of community and the responsibilities that we all have as community members, not just to look out for us as individuals. So if you haven't read up on things I've sent you, I'll definitely send you more in HB 20. Not all legislation's bad. I don't want to say that. There are hundreds of bills that are being looked at. A couple of good things that we're looking at right now. HB 214 and HB 594, looking at funding building aid, 100% plus paying off the $32 million tail. And so sort of passing legislation saying, hey, you need to put $50 million in every year, and one saying put $50 million and put the additional 32 to get this thing taken care of and get this back on the right track. So there are some good pieces of legislation, there are some bad pieces of legislation. I will give a little shout out to Linda, Tanner, our rep on the House Ed board, down there fighting hard to try to, keep things where they need to be. But it is an uphill battle. If folks want more information regarding any legislation, please let me know, and I'll definitely continue to share things with the board. Two last pieces for me.
Well, you're reading the Zoom, I'm not jumping in on that.
Please.
But we both attended the Zoom. If anyone's interested, the authors, professors, they wrote Wolf at the Schoolhouse Door. It's a fascinating look at the national trend to which Russ just spoke effectively to. So if you do want to learn more, Wolf at the Schoolhouse Door. We certainly see some of that activity in our community. We saw lots of it on Monday night.
So two last pieces for me, just as more and more people get vaccinated, remembering that even though you're vaccinated, there are still protocols which the CDC and people are asking you to follow, and us here. So wearing a mask when you're in our building, unless you're moving around, if you're seated 6 feet, you'll have to take your mask off. Even though you may be vaccinated, may be safe, you're still able to potentially catch the virus and shed the virus to someone else. And then the last piece, just to comment, we do not have a contract on our website, but the NHPELRB, the Public Employment Labor Relations Board site, which is a public website, has on it and always has, and folks know if you've negotiated contracts, we've dealt with contracts. All municipalities, fire, police, town employees, correctional institutions, all the schools, they're all there, they're all very public, and you can go down, you can actually even go pull up past years if you want to do some comparisons. So just want to make sure that folks know, yes, it's not on us, but it is a very public document that people can find.
Thank you. Policy is next on the menu. Yeah, I'm staring at you.
Somebody gonna make a motion?
So I'll make a motion to approve the second readings of the policies as listed: BGAA, BHE, CBI-R, EB, EBB, GBCD, GBCE, JCA, JLCG. Sounds like a kindergartner speech exercise. Do you have your motion, sir? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Carrie. Now we have discussion. This is where you show off.
I don't want to show off, I just want to keep it brief. The policies have been posted for over a month now on the website. They're generally attached to the PDF with the agenda, so they've been out there, and I always encourage anyone that has any questions to, give a shout to Russ or to myself. I'll do a quick summary. The policies that start with a B are basically board governance policies. There's a couple of those. We're basically consolidating 3 policies, development, adoption, and review, into one policy. We have another policy in there that deals with email and electronic communications, including social media. That's been tweaked a bit. The board has added a policy to incorporate a self-assessment and self-reflection component into the superintendent's evaluation, the annual evaluation that we do as a team. There's some workplace safety and loss management and school safety policies that incorporate some recent Department of Labor protocols. Background investigation and criminal history records checks. We're incorporating substitutes and bus drivers into that more specifically. And it's also important, I think, to understand that only the superintendent can review the results of these background checks. Nobody else in the district has access to those, nor should they. There's a policy in there that addresses some information for child sexual abuse prevention relative to a policy that we put into place last year. It's basically an additional piece to that policy. Employees are given information materials and training that deal with abuse prevention, harassment prevention, and reporting mandates. There's a couple J policies that have been consolidated when it comes to change of school assignment for reasons of best interests and for reasons of manifest hardship due to some legislation. Those two have been basically combined into one policy. And finally, we have tweaked the policy that relates to concussions and head injuries, and that's also part of what's posted on the website. So there you have it, folks.
Thank you.
Any
questions,
questions?
comments from the rest of the board? All right. All in favor of approving the second reading of the policies as I listed in the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much again for the work of policy you and Russ and the others do. It's often a real challenge for school boards to keep up with, and it's something that we do a really good job at. So thank you very much. We'll go on to action items. The next school year. Summer reading, Mr. Houston, gets followed by the new school calendar. Have a motion to approve the proposed 2021-22 school calendar, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed 2021-2022 school calendar.
Looking down the line.
I'll second that motion.
All right, thank you. Discussion, questions, comments? No? Challenges? Kids start school on August 30th. Just like that, we start it up again.
Just out of curiosity, do we have a graduation date yet for this year?
John, I think we kind of set that, didn't we?
Yeah, we haven't officially announced it yet. Yeah.
I'll put it on.
Second Friday, maybe? I don't know.
I'll put it on.
Yeah, if you give me a second, I can find it.
Yeah, no, I'll put it on an agenda item for next month.
Okay, Mike was curious.
Sweat.
I'd like to get through the snow, the winter before we get too ahead of ourselves.
Thinking ahead.
Thinking about baseball now.
It's baseball.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? All right, all in favor of approving the proposed 2021-22 school calendar, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We move around. We're looking for a motion to approve the Sunup Middle High School stipend positions.
We'll make a motion to approve the Sunapee Middle High School stipend positions.
Thank you, Candy. Seconded by? Ed, is that a cough or a second?
That's just a cough.
I'll second.
Terry gets a second. All right, moving chair there. All right, for discussion, it's by the list. Any questions or comments for Sean or Russ regarding the spring stipends?
What are the advisor?
Class advisors?
Well, yeah. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it.
Mock trial, service club, beekeeping, art club, play, spelling bee.
It's great to see so many things continue to be offered.
Yeah, it's amazing. You think, the list this long, a year into COVID, it's kind of amazing. Not seeing, please, comments, sir?
Just a quick announcement on mock trial. It's the one, they have been practicing, but we actually found out today that they're not going to be able to compete this year. So we just had, the competition is still going on. It was going to be done remotely, but we had a couple circumstances that didn't allow us to do it this year.
Mock trial.
Mock trial. So we'll probably work on some stipend there. Probably I'll go through Mr. Holden where it'd probably be a combination because we won't do the actual competition, but the person has been doing practices and been working, weekly on that.
Okay. Other thoughts or questions on the long list? All in favor of approving the Sunapee Middle High School stipend positions for spring as noted, please say aye.
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 All right.
Jesse? Okay, then I don't think you did it, but can we get
Oh, I missed
motion to approve the,
Yeah, I missed it. Put a check by it, I kept on trucking. So, one more action item, because I forgot to do it earlier. Looking for a motion,
approve the proposed suicide prevention and response plan?
yeah, I was gonna get the B,
Nope.
this one. JLB, let me just
Nope.
make the motion, hold on a second.
No, you're not approving the policy, you're approving the plan.
The plan, I'm sorry. Let me just,
Okay.
let my brain catch up. I was for a second. Yeah, there it is. All right, take two, try it again. Looking for a motion to approve the SAU 85 suicide prevention and response plan, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the suicide prevention and response plan.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Carrie and Andy. Thanks for sitting through my fumble. Any additional discussion? You did a great job, the overview. All right, all in favor of approving the suicide prevention plan as listed, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, missed that. Go back on track. Informational items. We're going to start with deliberative session review. My, what an interesting evening we all had. Who would like to kick off a board discussion about our interesting deliberative session? Comments you want to make, observations you want to offer?
You want me to start?
If you want to start. I mean, this isn't a pressure thing.
No, I had a really good discussion with someone yesterday who attended on Monday night, and
A little louder.
I had a discussion with somebody who attended on Monday night, and I think, summed up what it's all about pretty well, so I just wanted to share those thoughts. I mean, he indicated he thought that, we're coming to a table as far as Article 3 is concerned with a very good compromising, recognizing obviously there's not going to be a $0 solution or a plan that's going to please everybody. The thing that this person has always been concerned about, their number one concern has been the ventilation, safety, and security of that building, and how easy in particular it is for a bad guy to get into either the main building and especially the portable building. Those were his exact words, actually. And so he was really encouraged also to see that his concerns and the concerns of a lot of other people have been validated very specifically by the state of New Hampshire, and of course the low bond rates and the potential for building aid were very, very appealing to him. And so, I just thought he hit the nail on the head with everything he had to say. He was very encouraged. It just feels like it's the right solution for the right, reason at the right time, and certainly for the right price and the right value that we would be getting if the interest rates stay low for the next few months and the building aid comes through. It'll be a phenomenal deal. And so it was just really encouraging to get the sense that, the attendees got what they should have gotten out of the Article 3 discussion. And, the time is now, I think.
Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people still say that the school board hasn't listened. And I just find that not factual at all. We listened hard last year, and people didn't want to spend that kind of money for a single campus solution. So we came up with a 50-year solution that cost less than half. Some people in this room told me if the solution was less than half last year, they would have paid for it. They would have voted for it. And now the same people don't like this solution. So it's like, I feel like we listen, we change our direction, and we still don't get the support of some folks. And that's a little disheartening. That gets old after a while. And I also feel like they say that we don't have any way of paying back for the things that we want. Well, we looked at a biomass system that's going to start paying us back in 5 years. So there's one example. Energy savings, all these things that are going to help pay for the system, pay for this new school. So I really feel that we've done nothing but listen, and I'm looking for a little more support.
Gary or Ed want to add?
I don't know that I can add anything of monumental value beyond that. Not just from Monday, but I would say the feedback in general that I've heard from people that I'm in communications with throughout the community is that the price point is definitely more favorable. And what's encouraging to me is some of the people that I know that were not on board last year due to cost have come around and feel that we've balanced the needs with the price of what it's going to cost us to address our issues. So I feel like this is a good place to be. I feel like it's never going to be any lower cost than this to address our issues broadly. So that's all I can, what I think.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my concerns last night is, unfortunately, it's hard to deal with certain comments that can be made by the public, or sometimes I think they throw stuff on the walls hoping that people will listen to it. One that reached out to me last night was about professional negotiators that we're going up against. I can tell you from sitting on that board and negotiating with the teachers union, there is no professional people that the teacher union hires to come in here to negotiate against. I guess some people may say that we're lay school board members. But for an example, for myself, I've been in the public eye for 28 years. I've negotiated on the side of being an employer for at least 10 years. I'm a small business owner. I've owned a business for 10 years here in the state of New Hampshire, as well as had to negotiate contracts for myself or for the people that I represent. So being in an area where I've managed budgets of $60,000 a year to $1.5 million a year, having employees from 5 to as many as 25 people that I have to care for, and being, as a police chief, you're almost middle management. You have to deal with your select boards and town administrators to your employees. And I know the importance of keeping a good employee. I know the importance of what it is to pay for, to hire, to train, to get people to stay. And I also know the importance of keeping people for a long time. It saves you money by having people there for a long time than training and training and training. So I have a vast area that I've not been into professional training to negotiate, but I can tell you I've sat on many boards negotiating in many types of contracts. I've employed people. And one of the things I found the most interesting about being on this board is now I'm fighting to save my tax dollars. Sitting on that board, looking at a $12 million budget or looking at teachers' contracts, I don't want my taxes to go up. I just like anybody else, I really don't want to see my taxes increase. But I also know what it costs to keep people, and what it costs to train people, and what it costs for your students having constant switchovers. So for people to say that, we're lay people sitting on a board negotiating with these, the vision of people's coming in suit and ties and briefcases, arguing with us is just not factual. I like the way Sunup does it. I've enjoyed sitting on the other end of it. I've enjoyed fighting for the citizens and trying to save tax dollars in the best we can. I know from when I've been in the middle of that, I know that there's things that have to be given up, but I also know the most important thing that you have in a facility like this is your employees. You have to fight to keep them, but you have to concede in other areas in order to make that work. So I just wish that people would throw stuff out there at the wall and be more factual, because when you're on TV, when other people are listening to it, now we're fighting professional people with suits, suitcases, and ties, and it's just not like that.
Well, thank you for the experience you bring, and I hope when the new board resets, because you and I are both on it, that you would volunteer to lead the negotiations again. Your contributions specifically around the insurance buyout has saved, you had the number the other day, $350,000. The push to get all the sports stuff, said this is what we're willing to pay, you guys work it out. They went and worked it out, came back, we talked about this in the meeting, it's public information. It was probably needed to be done for a long time, it was done, and you led us through that, so I think I appreciate your experience and your expertise, and I look forward to having you sign up first to lead that with the new board that resets in March. Thank you for that. I had a couple things. I realized, and I'll give you an opportunity to speak as well if you like, but I had a couple things. The way the evening went with a couple of the same people speaking repeatedly, I think some really good work and understanding unfortunately got bulldozed. So I want to just sort of pause here. I was kind of upset after the meeting. I was thinking, we had a bunch of citizens step up and volunteer on the advisory committee about what to do with the building. We heard a lot from one voice, some from another voice, and I don't think any of us were able to just pause and say thank you by name. So that's one thing I want to do. That was one of my things. We had from the Article 8 last year, there was a thing about public committees. There aren't committees like that in the state of New Hampshire. It's hard to find an example. I worked with the New Hampshire School Board Association. Carrie volunteered as a sort of a side project to help figure this out. So we got a draft of guidelines, rewrote them, refined them, got superintendent input. It was a lot of work last year to do that. And maybe I was naive, but I thought 2 or 3 meetings, they'd make a recommendation. We've been talking about this in circles for 30 years in our town. I thought we'd get some fresh eyes, some fresh recommendation. I think they did like 10 meetings. I don't know how many hours these folks did. So I do want to publicly thank Kirk Bishop, Steve McGrath, Melissa Trow, Jim Lyons, Tanner Royce, and Anna Miner. Did I miss anybody? I went back through the notes.
Michael and Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin Cooney.
Mike Axton.
And Mike Axton, yeah, I didn't mean to miss them. So,
Chris Whitehouse.
yeah, and so we heard a lot from a couple voices, but what I thought was unfortunate is through all of this, there was some really good work done. They did come back with 5, I think it was recommendations. I don't have the report right in front of me. Very interesting exchanges. So I just wanted to pause a little bit, give credit where credit is due, and say thank you to the community because they put a lot of time into that. So that was one thing. There were some broad sweeping statements about, I'm going to take the high road. There were some broad sweeping statements, and I was sitting there thinking, our budget advisory committee pretty much got derailed this year by one person's behavior. And I think some opportunity was missed within that. So what I was left thinking after some of the speeches the other night was the opportunity in budget advisory is that more of the community understands how the school is managed and how it's run. And I think this year, because of some unfortunate outcomes, I think that got lost. So I was looking to Mr. Moynihan, Russ, if you could give a little bit of insight into like 6th classes, different hats and everything else, I think some of the broad statements could, folks that make them, if they really don't understand how the school system runs, this would be a chance to educate them and help them out a little bit. You could give some insight?
I certainly, yeah, you want Mr. Holden to go first, or you want me to go first?
Sean.
Well, first of all, I do appreciate